It was a moment of joy for the champions of free speech. After 14 years, Wikileaks founder Julian Assange walked as a free man. In 2010, Assange single-handedly exposed the United States when he published hundreds of thousands of classified documents on his website. The proverbial treasure trove exposed the US military's war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan, but the expose came at a cost. Assange would spend the next 14 years in captivity and seclusion. He was subjected to intense mental agony. Over the next few minutes, we would tell you how Assange brokered peace with the US government, what went right behind the scenes, and the quiet role played by Australian diplomats to get Assange out. Assange's Australian attorney Jennifer Robinson said diplomacy and intense lobbying in the United States played a big role in the process. The Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese hailed Assange's release as a win for the country. After all, Canberra had to leverage its security ties with Washington and London to secure Assange's freedom. Almost a decade ago, under the then Conservative government, there was a little political will in Canberra to back its nationalist case. But things changed at the dawn of this decade, and the first big break for Assange came in January 2021. The then Shadow Attorney General Mark Dreyfus issued a statement calling for the case against Assange to end. This was shortly after a British court found that it would be unjust to extradite him to the United States. This was the first indication that a major political party in Australia was supporting the cause to free Assange. The very next year, Labour came to power in Canberra and Assange finally had a state behind him. Later that year, none other than PM Albanese called for his release on the floor of the House of Representatives.
Regardless of the views that people have about Mr Assange's activities, the case has dragged on for too long. There is nothing to be gained by his continued incarceration, and we want him brought home to Australia.
This marked the first time a Prime Minister had mentioned Assange in Parliament since 2012. Behind the scenes, Albanese and senior cabinet colleagues used visits to the US to lobby for Assange's freedom. Around the same time, former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd and former Defence Minister Stephen Smith were appointed as Australia's top envoys to the US and Britain respectively. This added two more sympathetic and permanent lobbyists for Assange's case. Smith visited Assange in UK's Belmarsh prison in April 2023. This was the first such visit by Australia's UK diplomat since he was imprisoned 4 years earlier. Deeper ties between Australia and the US through the AUKUS Security Pact also helped push diplomatic efforts along. Next US ambassador to Australia, Caroline Kennedy, indicated last August that a deal was possible. The very next month, a cross-party delegation of Australian politicians travelled to Washington to lobby for Assange. Australian lawmakers putting up a united front for Assange helped the case. Months later, US President Joe Biden said Washington is considering putting an end to Assange's prosecution. Ultimately, a deal was forged, ending Julian Assange's agony, and the quiet efforts of Australian diplomats bore fruit. Assange's freedom is a victory of speech and a unique example of a state standing against the persecution by a state that claims to champion the cause of freedom and democracy around the world.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like our videos and hit the bell icon to stay updated with the latest.